at a rally last night. We'll also get to Hillary Clinton, who will never leave, ever. And we'll discuss radical feminism, and we'll get to the mailbag. So it's going to be a jam-packed show. But let me remind you, I will be at Politicon this Sunday. Since I'm wasting my Sunday there, you need to come too. Okay, we all have to suffer together. Come join me for a keynote speech, a book signing, and a panel with all the Daily Wire gang. It is guaranteed to be a great time for you and to produce an abundance of leftist tears, so you won't want to miss it. Make sure you use promo code DW when you get your tickets so they know that we sent you. Also, don't miss Andrew Klavan's next chapter of Another Kingdom, performed by the execrable Michael Knowles. Today we'll be live streaming the first 15 minutes of episode 3, titled The Beast. Head on over to dailywire.com, subscribe to watch the full episode, and get early access to upcoming episodes every Monday. We're going to get to the news in just a second. But first, if you have been watching the battle for the House, you know that there's a lot of uncertainty in the economy because let's say the Democrats were to win the House and the Senate. Well, that could have some pretty severe ramifications for your 401k, could have some severe ramifications for the stock market, which is why you need to go talk to my friends over at birchgold.com. Birch Gold is the place to go for your precious metals investing. It's a hedge, precious metals. They've always been a hedge against inflation and uncertainty and instability. Gold is a safe haven against uncertainty, which is why you should be at least partially diversified. The company that I trust with precious metal purchases is Birch Gold Group. And right now, thanks to a little-known IRS tax law, you can even move your IRA or eligible 401k into an IRA backed by physical gold and silver. It is perfect for folks who want to protect their hard-earned retirement savings from future geopolitical uncertainty. Contact Birch Gold Group right now to request a free information kit on physical precious metals. It's a comprehensive 16-page kit. It shows how gold and silver can protect your savings. It can legally move that IRA or 401k out of risky stocks and bonds and into a precious metals IRA if that's something you're interested in. To get that no-cost, no-obligation kit, go to birchgold.com/Ben. That is birchgold.com/Ben. Again, birchgold.com/Ben. Go check it out. Let them know that we sent you. Okay, so Hillary will never, ever go away. Ever. Okay, so there's a new article in Politico today about how Hillary may want to run for president for a third time. Now, I think that folks on the right are a little bit too sanguine about this. I think they figure, okay, Trump beat her last time, he'll beat her again this time. And let's face it, Hillary is a garbage candidate. She's a smoking garbage heap of a candidate. The reason that President Trump is president is, yes, because he has a certain skill set, right? This kind of skill set that makes him dangerous to people like you. But Trump's skill set is not the actual reason that he is president alone. It is because Hillary Clinton is the worst candidate in the history of American politics. How do I know this? Because she lost to Donald Trump in a race for the presidency. And she won by 2.5. But what's really funny is you see folks on the right, and they say things like, well, silly Hillary, Wisconsin, maybe that election was really razor-thin close. Now, it is true that President Trump will now have a very good economic record to run on. It is also true that a lot of folks just didn't show up to vote for Hillary Clinton in 2016. Donald Trump won fewer votes in Wisconsin in 2016 than Mitt Romney won in 2012. Romney lost the state by something like 8 points. Hillary lost the state of Wisconsin. No one likes Hillary Clinton. But because no one likes her, a lot of people thought that she was going to run away with it and just didn't show up to vote for her. There was no enthusiasm. It's like, okay, I'm not going to ruin my day. New York Times says there's a 99% shot she's going to be president anyway. Why am I going to bother? If she were to come back, I'm not quite as sanguine as everybody else that it ends in a radical defeat for her. I think Democrats show up in large numbers in a sort of revenge play. I think that's a significant possibility. That said, would Trump prefer her to some of the other candidates who are out there? No question. I mean, she's a person he knows how to handle. She's got more baggage than any national airline that you care to speak of. And she is truly awful at what she does. Still, she won't go away because the minute she goes away, she can't make money on her other lucrative side gigs. If you look at the donations to the Clinton Foundation, incredibly, donations to the Clinton Foundation dropped precipitously as soon as she was no longer running for president, because that's how things work in Clinton land. If she is not relevant to the national political discourse, the money train dries up. So a bunch of folks on the Democratic side are trying to basically say to her, stick around, but kind of go away. So Michael Avenatti, my favorite of the 2020 Democratic presidential contenders, and I'm openly rooting for Michael Avenatti. Okay, I've made this absolutely clear. I root for entertainment value. Right? The outcome's going to be what the outcome's going to be. I'm not God. I can't control the outcome. I can tell you how I think you should go vote. But if I'm rooting for a candidate, make it Michael Avenatti, guys. I mean, Democrats, just like an Avenatti-Trump race would just be the great. The first question in a debate would be, which one of you slept with Stormy Daniels more times? Like, that would be an actual question in a presidential debate. And I'm all for it. I mean, we're there, man. Let's embrace the hurricane, embrace the suck. Like, let's just do this thing. Michael Avenatti, here's what he had to say about Hillary Clinton in this article in Politico. He says, If I was running, I could see certain circumstances in which she could be helpful from a rally perspective in certain locations on a limited basis. Which is to say, like, stay away, Hillary. Stay far, far away. He says, I think there's still a lot of people that support her, and for that reason, she could certainly play a positive role in some capacity in 2020. This is like the question in a job interview where they ask you to name your worst quality, and you're desperately trying to think of your worst quality to name. So they're saying, like, name a good thing about Hillary Clinton. He's like, maybe she'd be good at, like, standing there sometimes. So that's pretty great. But that is not dissuading anybody in the Hillary Clinton camp from thinking that maybe she's toast. So Philippe Reines, who is just a jerk. So Philippe Reines has been known for years, legitimately 2 decades, as Hillary's fixer, and he's a nasty guy, and he attacks his opponents with aplomb and alacrity. Here is what he says about Hillary Clinton. He says, chalking the loss up to her being a failed candidate is an oversimplification. Nope, it is not. She is a giant failed candidate. She lost to Barack Obama, a nobody, an absolute nobody in 2008, with the entire media behind her at the beginning of that race. And then she nearly lost to Bernie Sanders, a septuagenarian, crazy loon bag socialist who was tossed out of a commune in the 70s for being too useless. She almost lost to that guy in primaries. And then she lost to a real estate developer whose main claim to fame is saying you're fired on national television and running a Miss USA shtick. Like that's legitimately who she lost to. So I don't think it's an oversimplification to say that she is the worst candidate you could possibly imagine. Like if you were creating a bad candidate in a lab, that candidate would look exactly like Hillary Clinton. But Reines says she is smarter than most, tougher than most. She could raise money easier than most. And it was an absolute fight to the death. And then he was asked, will Hillary run? He says, the likelihood is somewhere between highly unlikely and 0, but it's not 0. So everywhere Democrats, you can hear the shrieks of Democrats through the walls here. In fact, our leftist tears hot or cold tumbler is overflowing because even Democrats understand that Hillary Clinton running for president is a bad, bad idea. The problem is that Democrats have actually set up the narrative for her to run. This is the part that's really fascinating, is that the Democrats are now trying to run, again, their War on Women playbook from 2012. And they're doing it in a more intense way now. Now, Hillary would be a very bad fit for that playbook, except that Democrats are out of their minds. So she'd be a bad fit for the War on Women playbook because she legitimately fought a war on every woman that her husband harassed, abused, slept with. Right? She literally did that for a solid 15 to 20 years of her career. But because she is a woman, we must hear her roar. And you can see that the radical feminists are out in force. They think that this is their time. And when I say radical feminists, I mean radical feminists. The best radical feminist piece of the day comes courtesy of Tori Truscheit over at slate.com, the repository for much of American stupidity. This is the actual title of the piece. The Rage of All Women. Okay, this is a quote from the piece. This isn't me being homophobic. This is a quote from the piece. Man-hating dyke is the worst thing you can call a lesbian, but in the Me Too era, it's time to reclaim it. Okay, what do you mean, Tori Truscheit? Well, she will tell you. In the wake of the Kavanaugh hearings, a dyke friend in her 20s posted that, real talk, she doesn't like men. I hit the like button super fast, feeling secretive and sort of guilty about it. She'd come through the same radical queer and trans circles I came up in, and in that click, I felt relieved to acknowledge an obvious truth. Most men treat women like something less than human, whether accidentally or on purpose, and that means it's hard to like them. Men are bad. Men are evil. Solid political argument. I can see that you're aiming for political victory here by immediately alienating half the population. I'd recently been scanning the men coming into my workplace, wondering about their histories of sexual assault. Yeah, that's a normal thing to do. That's a real normal thing to do. Senya, how often have you done that at the office? You just walk in, you're like, I wonder who here has raped someone.
Every day.
Okay, so I stand corrected. Senya says she does this every day. In any case, this woman says, is he a rapist? What about him? Where does he fall on the creep scale? It was an old impulse that had returned in force as the nation debated just how many of their husbands, brothers, and sons were perpetrators, given that 1 in 3 American women experience sexual violence in their lifetimes. Okay, again, that is a very, very vague definition of sexual violence. Okay, if you're suggesting that 1 in 3 women in America is raped over the course of her life, that is not a true statistic. That is just a false statistic. Because Republicans insisted that men were the ones who should be afraid, while women recounted the everyday harrowing ways we reroute our lives to avoid assault. My woke male coworkers made Me Too jokes as if the whole thing were a funny spectacle. It was enough to make me want to stop talking to men entirely. I have a feeling that the feeling was mutual. Yet still, inside my head, the not all men chorus roared. What about the dads of 2 who liked all my angry tweets? Or the guy who showed up at the hospital with too much food when my spouse was in labor? Or my friends who are trans men? Well, that's where it gets really confusing. When you actually have a woman who says she's a man, Are you supposed to hate her for being a man, or are you supposed to like her for being a woman? This is when things get really baffling for folks on the left. Patriarchy runs so deep that I defend hypothetical men's feelings right away, even to myself. I am a married lesbian, as far away from needing male approval as a woman can get, and I still feel it, the slow, poisonous drip of cultural conditioning that tells me to prioritize men. Actually, that cultural conditioning says you might want to treat human beings like, individual human beings, because they're human beings. Which is my imagination, that thing that could break us out of American fascism. Your imagination is not going to break anybody out of anything. I mean, it's not even going to break you out of the asylum, lady. She says, it's trapped in an old feminist loop because I've been trained that the worst thing I can be is a man-hating dyke. But it's time to confront the latent homophobia in that insult. It's not latent homophobia. That's an actual just homophobic insult. There's nothing latent about that. And she says, in our fear that anger makes us seem too gay, because anger, not fear, is precisely the emotion that's needed these days. Beware the person who says that anger is the proper response to your life. The people who say that anger is the proper response to the generalized situation in your life, that person is not giving you good advice. My friend Andrew Klavan, he has a great phrase. He says, anger is the devil's cocaine. I think that is basically correct. I think that if you are looking at your life and you don't have a specific instance of injustice to point to, you just have a generalized outrage about the world, you're going to fail in life. A great way to fail in life is to sink yourself into a generalized feeling that you will never be able to succeed, especially in a free country. It's one thing to say that in a dictatorship, but this is the freest country in world history. I mean, this lady is writing a piece about how much she hates men in the pages of a national newspaper, basically, and probably being championed for it by a bunch of folks on the left. The radical feminist movement is in full swing. And this is why Hillary Clinton could still come back, because it would be easy for Hillary to say, the real reason I lost was radical sexism, and then try and drive out single women to the polls in high numbers to take revenge against Donald Trump. I'm going to get more into this in just one second. But first, let's talk about a sponsor who's been in the news recently, 23andMe. So Elizabeth Warren recently took a DNA test. It was really good that she did, because it revealed that she is whiter than the backside of this piece of paper. And she's incredibly, incredibly white. I mean, she makes Marky Mark look like MC Hammer. Like that, Elizabeth Warren is an incredibly white person. And she knows that because she took a DNA test showing that she is 1,024th white. Well, if you are interested in actually checking out your own ancestry and finding out whether you, in fact, are less white than Elizabeth Warren, the way that Lindsey Graham is doing right now, check out 23andMe. It's a DNA testing service that can offer insights into your ancestry, health, wellness, and traits. It gives you a bitter taste report versus sweet and salty reports. They can tell you how DNA plays a role in determining food preference. Sleep reports, they can tell you if you are more likely to be an especially deep sleeper. They can give you a saturated fat and weight report, telling you based on your genetics how your weight might be affected by saturated fats in your diet. Order your 23andMe Health and Ancestry Service Kit at 23andme.com/Shapiro. That's the number 23andme.com/Shapiro. Everybody's doing it. It's the hot new thing. Make sure that you, like Elizabeth Warren, know your ancestry. 23andme.com/Shapiro. Don't be caught up short when you claim Native American ancestry but have no evidence to prove it. Go to 23andme.com/Shapiro and check it out right now. Honestly, they're having a great week over at 23andMe. Like, really, this is a great week to advertise. So, the anger that has broken out on the radical feminist left is good for Hillary Clinton, obviously. It's also good for folks like Kamala Harris. On the intersectionality scale, radical feminists are trying to push women up that scale. Right now, there's a philosophy that I've talked about a lot on the show, on the left, that says that we can prioritize people's viewpoints based on their genetics, based on their ancestry, based on their ethnicity, based on their class. So basically, here's how this hierarchy goes of views that we should respect. It goes like this: LGBT person, black person, Hispanic person, woman, Asian person, Jewish person, white person. That's how it goes. That's the hierarchy. And women are somewhere in the middle, as I mentioned, right? They're kind of behind Hispanic, but ahead of Asian, right? That's where women are. So what radical feminists are trying to do is elevate women in the hierarchy of victimhood higher up the ladder, and that way folks like Hillary Clinton have a better shot at being elected by claiming victimhood. This is why, it's because women aren't high enough on the intersectionality scale that you saw Elizabeth Warren trying to claim Native American ancestry. Because she was saying it's not enough for me to be a woman in a Democratic primary. I also have to claim membership in a historically victimized group. I'm also a Native American. That, of course, fell apart for her. So if you can't beat the intersectionality course, you join the intersectionality course. Radical feminists are trying to elevate women as victims in American society. And so this woman at Slate, as crazy as she sounds, this Tory Trueshite, who says that she wants to be a that she basically wants to be part of the she-woman man-haters club, like the reverse of the gang from Alfalfa. You know, when she says this is not actually that far out of the realm of the mainstream in certain Democratic circles. I love this. Here's another example. Carolyn Hacks is an advice columnist over at the Washington Post. And there's a letter. Here's the letter. Dear Carolyn, I have a daughter, and some other moms of daughters and I have started getting together at a local playground at a set time each week. Recently, a mom of a boy brought her son to the playground at the same time we were there. I asked her, nicely I thought, if she would mind leaving because we had wanted it to be a girls-only time. She refused and seemed angry at me. If she comes back, is there a better way I can approach her? This has been such a sweet time for moms and daughters, and having a boy there is naturally going to change things. We live in a world where boys get everything and girls are left with crumbs. And I would think this mom would realize that, but she seems to think her son is entitled to crash this girls-only time. I know I can't legally keep her from a public park, but can I appeal to her better nature? And then the response was, shooing off the mom and her boy was terrible. But I have to admit that I actually have a little bit of sympathy for the mom. Not in the sense that she should shoo off the boys, but boys do change the dynamic when girls are playing. I have a son, I have a daughter. They play very, very differently. When boys go to a girls-only group, it changes the dynamic. Boys are different than girls. Radical feminists want to have it both ways. Boys and girls are exactly the same, but girls are different from boys and therefore should be separated off from boys when they want to be separated off from boys. I think that we should recognize some truths. Boys and girls are different. Also, we live in a free country, and because we live in a free country, people should be able to rise and fall on their own merit without claiming victimization at the hands of the freest society in world history. Okay, so is Hillary Clinton going to run again? I highly doubt it. I don't think she's going to, but maybe she will. Who the hell knows? Okay, meanwhile, President Trump, he did a rally last night, and his rallies are usually highly entertaining. He was speaking in Missoula, and his rallies are basically stand-up comedy routines. The president doesn't rally like President Obama would, go out and make a stump speech. The president goes out there and he just riffs for an hour. And it's usually very entertaining. I know a lot of folks have been to President Trump's rallies. They say it's a lot of fun. Obviously, the crowd is there to have a good time. It really is kind of half a political rally and half a comedy routine because Trump is a highly entertaining human. Well, sometimes that has upsides and sometimes that has downsides because like all comedians, when President Trump gets a riffin', sometimes the riff is good and sometimes he is just going to put his foot so far down his mouth that it comes out his colon and out his rear end and back around again. Sometimes he creates an Ouroboros of human physicality. So here's the good. Sometimes you see President Trump do stuff like this. Like, this is kind of funny. So President Trump, there's a woman in the crowd, and she shouts, "I love you." And here's President Trump's response.
Wise guys, the Democrats have turned, I love you too. Who said that? Who said that? Who said that? It's finally a woman. You know, I get it from the men all the time. And so far, every guy that said I love you, they're just not my type. I finally heard it from a woman. Thank you.
I mean, come on, that's funny stuff. That's funny stuff. And there are people break that down. Oh, it's because he's sexist. And it's because he's funny. Okay, that's a funny thing to say. That's a funny thing to say. The problem is, because the president is actually a performer, Donald Trump is a performer. He spent his entire life being a performer. As someone who performs on stage, I know what it's like. You play to the crowd. The crowd that's in front of you responds with cheers, and they respond with boos, and they respond with laughter, and you're constantly trying to keep them hooked. And President Trump even said this when he was just candidate Trump. He would say that he'd go to a rally, and if he was on his stump speech, and he was 3/4 of the way through a speech, and people looked bored, he would just start saying, "Build the wall," because it got people all jazzed up. Like, he actually says that he performs like a performer. Well, the problem is that when you perform like a performer, the president doesn't actually have a fully functional brain-to-mouth filter. Like, that filter is pretty shoddy. Right? Whatever starts here ends up here, and it doesn't matter what started there. It's one of the good things about the president. It's why he's authentic. Why people like authenticity in politics. The reason he's authentic feeling is because he's authentic in the same way that my 4.5-year-old is authentic. She thinks it comes out. That's the way it is. Like, there's no pretense. That's good in politics because it's honest, right? You get the feeling that he's honest. Even the stuff that Trump says that is dishonest feels honest because he actually believes it at the time. People who say that Trump is just going out there and he's lying and he's prevaricating, Donald Trump believes everything that Donald Trump says. That doesn't mean everything that Donald Trump says is right or factual, but it is authentic. So that's the good side of Trump. The problem is sometimes the thoughts that go through the head should not come out the mouth. And that happened yesterday, twice actually. So he was talking about Greg Gianforte, who is he's Montana congressman, And I guess Jan Fort was at this rally. And the president decides, you know, it'd be a great idea to praise that time that Congressman Jan Fort body slammed a reporter. So if you all recall back to the 2016 campaign, there was a situation in which a reporter confronted Greg Gianforte like 2 nights before the election. And Gianforte got mad, and he went full Macho Man Randy Savage on him, right? He went full Undertaker. He like grabbed him by the neck, and he slammed him to the ground. And this is caught on tape. And then he had to plead guilty to a misdemeanor. President Trump thinks, you know what? I'm in front of a crowd. I've done WWE before. Let's talk about this thing. You know, this is an issue that really needs to be out on the table 2 years later. Let's do this. So here's President Trump. And the only reason I'm smiling is because this is the world we have chosen. This is the business we have chosen, as Hyman Roth says. Okay, we're here. We can't go back. I'm only smiling because I'm smiling like that guy in the Survivor GIF. Ever seen the Survivor GIF that's online where it's a bunch of women who are standing in the foreground and they don't know a piece of news and the guy in the background knows the piece of news? And all the women start getting very upset and they start crying. And the man in the background just starts smiling broadly. That's me about politics right now. I know all this is going to happen. And if you've been watching, you know all this is going to happen. So all of the tears and the suffering, like, that's just because you didn't know it was going to happen. But if you've been watching, you knew what was going to happen. What were the chances that Trump wasn't going to mention Gianforte body slamming a reporter if Greg Gianforte is in front of him? What were the chances? 0%? Negative 100%? I'm just shocked that Trump hasn't flown in Gianforte as an actual rally mascot. Does that mean that it's a smart move? No, it turns out it's an unbelievably dumb move. And I'll discuss in a second what Trump said and why it was an incredibly dumb move and why entertaining the crowd in front of you is not always the smartest thing when there are cameras present in the room. You're not actually speaking to the crowd in front of you. You're speaking to everyone who can see you on the TV. But we'll talk about that in just a second. First, let's talk about your Second Amendment rights. When the founders crafted the Constitution, the very first thing they did was to make sacred the rights of the individual to share their ideas. The second thing they did was say, you need a right to bear arms to protect that first right. Bravo Company Manufacturing believes the same thing. BCM was started in a garage by Marine vets more than 2 decades ago to build a professional-grade product that meets combat standards. BCM believes the same level of protection should be provided to every American, regardless of whether they're a private citizen or a professional. BCM is not a sporting arms company. They design, engineer, manufacture life-saving equipment. They assume that each rifle leaving their shop will actually be used in a life-or-death situation by a responsible citizen, law enforcement officer, or a soldier overseas. Because that's what the Second Amendment is for. It's to protect you. It's not so you can go hunting or target shooting. It's really to protect your life and protect your liberty. Each component of a BCM rifle is hand-assembled and tested by Americans to a life-saving standard. BCM feels a moral responsibility to provide tools that are not going to fail you in a life-saving situation, and that's why they also work with leading instructors of marksmanship from top levels of America's special ops forces who can teach the skills necessary to defend yourselves. To learn more about Bravo Company Manufacturing, head on over to BravoCompanyMFG.com. These are spectacular dudes. I know some of them, where you can discover more about their products, special offers, upcoming news. That is BravoCompanyMFG.com. And go check them out also at YouTube.com/BravoCompanyUSA. You can learn more about them and the awesome people who make their products. Again, that's BravoCompanyMFG.com. Go check them out right now. All right, so the President of the United States, speaking in Missoula. I've given enough lead up to this clip. Here is the President, just fresh off his messaging about how the Democrats are engaged in mob politics and violent rhetoric, talking about how it's a good thing that a Republican congressman body slammed a reporter. Yep, this is real. Play it.
And we endorsed Greg very early, but I had heard that he body slammed a reporter. And he was way up, and I said, oh, this was like the day of the election or just before. And I said, oh, this is terrible. He's going to lose the election. Then I said, well, wait a minute. I know Montana pretty well. I think it might help him. And it did. No, he's a great guy. Tough cookie.
Here's why that's bad. So you're trying to make the argument. It's weird to me that I have to explain why it's bad when the President of the United States says it's good for people to body slam reporters. But I guess that's where we are right now. Guys, you're not supposed to body slam anybody in public or in private, it turns out. Like, violence, not good in civilized society. Bad, bad. Honest to God, I punish my 2.5-year-old for pushing his sister. Okay, I would not laud a congressman for picking up another human and body slamming him by the neck. And when you say that, like, here, it's almost 2 parts of stupidity what Trump said here. So part one is, I thought it was bad when he body slammed the guy, and then I thought, well, maybe it'll help. Okay, first of all, you are now removing the moral component from you shouldn't body slam people. And then second of all, you are saying that your own people, the folks who support you, are the kinds of people who are enthusiastic about the treatment by violence of your political opponents in the middle of a giant campaign in which you are tweeting hashtag jobs, not mobs. Why? Why, God, why? And then the president doubled down on this. He challenged Joe Biden, and he again makes a reference to Gianforte. So it's not a mistake. It's not like it just slipped out. Now he knows that the crowd cheered for it. So because the crowd cheered for it, the president has to double down on it. Very, very important that the president makes clear, absolutely clear, that he has no problem with body slamming reporters. Here he is again.
How about Sleepy Joe Biden? Sleepy Joe. Remember, he challenged me to a fight, and that was fine. And when I said he wouldn't last long, he'd be down faster than Greg would take him down. He'd be down so fast.
Okay, so now the president is saying, yeah, let's do the fight. So it was idiotic when Joe Biden challenged Trump to a fight, and now Trump's like, yeah, let's fight. First of all, I will admit, would I actually like to see a 2020 debate that is just fisticuffs between two 80-year-old men? You bet your ass I'd love it. I would love every second of it. They would just get up there, they have their walkers, they have the tennis balls on the bottom, and they just club each other. Like, it would just be great. I mean, and by the way, probably be more articulate than an actual debate between Joe Biden and President Trump. Like, there'd actually be more political content to them just smacking each other with walkers than them actually talking politics. But is it good that the president again references Gianforte? No, it is not. It is not, because this is immoral behavior. For the millionth time on this program, I can like a lot of President Trump's policy. I can like a lot of what President Trump does. I can be inclined to support him in 2020. And I can also think, this is stupid and also immoral. These things can coexist. Two things can be true at once, because this is reality and the world works that way. Now, President Trump does benefit from the fact that the media are completely insane. So instead of the media simply saying, he's talking about mob politics and Democrats being violent, and then he goes out and he says stuff like this, and it's really hypocritical and gross, and he shouldn't say that sort of stuff. Instead of them doing that, the direction they go is, you know what? This is just like the Saudi Arabian government that just took a guy in the Istanbul consulate, killed him, chopped up his body, and then liquefied it. When he says that Greg Gianforte should be body slammed, that's that type of attitude that led the Saudis to believe that they could murder a journalist. I'm not making this up. This is what members of the media say. Now, because the members of the media are insane and respond, so let's say Trump says something that is 100% stupid. And then the members of the Democratic Party and the media come back and say something that is 400% stupid. Folks on the right go, see, Trump triggered him. Trump triggered him. Trump is really good at triggering them. Well, I don't think it's actual genius. I always attribute to stupidity what I cannot attribute to malice. And I think that what we are watching here is President Trump just saying stuff and then the media being unable to hold themselves back and saying stupid things in response. So do I think that this is President Trump manipulating the media into being crazy? No, I think they're crazy and he drives them crazy and he's good at poking them. But they have a unique capacity to pull his chestnuts out of the fire. He'll say something and then the media overreaction is so insane that you go, well, I guess I can't side with those people. So here is CNN hosts drawing a comparison and a link between President Trump praising Greg Gianforte and the murder of Jamal Khashoggi by the Saudi Arabian government. You know how stupid you have to be to make this link? The Saudi Arabian government has been murdering people since, their entire existence. They've been murdering dissidents and journalists for literally decades. But it was only Trump. We're just going to ignore all of his... Trump came around. This is the part that's so annoying about the media. Yes, Trump says bad things. Guess what? The world was also a rough, bad place before President Trump was born. And before he was president, the world didn't start spinning the moment that President Trump was elected. Here are CNN hosts, though, trying to attribute the spike in treatment of bad journalists in places like Saudi Arabia to Trump, as though Trump is dictator of Saudi Arabia.
And at that rally last night, we'll play it for you, the president praised the body slamming. I need a guy who can do a body slamming like that. So why does it matter? Well, you might think that assaulting a journalist in any circumstance is bad, but remember, this happens 3 weeks after the apparent murder and dismemberment of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi. And the president, we should note, acknowledged that it certainly looks like this columnist is dead. At the same time, he refuses to condemn the Saudi regime for this apparent attack.
Okay, so if you think that President Trump is okay with the murder of a journalist because he says something stupid about Greg Gianforte, No. And if you think that President Trump is suddenly driving press members around the world to be killed because he said, like, the Russian government needed a cue from us. Like, I don't remember this sort of talk about President Obama when journalists were being killed all around the world under his watch. And journalists were legitimately being killed around the world under his watch. But because he didn't say this kind of public stuff, there was no linkage. Well, there's still no linkage, but Trump says dumb things, which is the obvious, answer to all of this. The worst example of this came courtesy of Joaquin Castro, one of the Castro brothers, who I guess Julian wants to run for president. Joaquin is just he's the other one, and nobody cares about that much. And he was on CNN, and he suggested that President Trump's administration had literally greenlit the murder of Jamal Khashoggi by the Saudi Arabian government, and then he was kind of using the Gianforte comment as evidence of this. Do we have that clip? This is the clip I sent over earlier. Did we get it? No? Okay, fine, whatever. Here it is. Good job, guys.
Let me get to the point that I think is most disturbing right now. The reporting that Jared Kushner may have, with U.S. intelligence, delivered a hit list, an enemies list, to the Crown Prince, to MBS in Saudi Arabia, and that the prince then may have acted on that, and one of the people that he took action against was Mr. Khashoggi.
That didn't happen. That's not a thing. Jared Kushner did not send a hit list to the Saudi Arabian government and tell them to go murder journalists. There's no evidence of this, and I like how Joaquin Castro says there's a rumor going around. There's a rumor going around that Joaquin Castro dismembers babies and eats them in his backyard. I don't have to provide any evidence for this rumor. It's just a rumor. I heard it around. This is why Trump will continue to win so long as people do not treat him with the proper level of objectivity. And by the way, objectivity does not mean moral censure when he says bad stuff. It means that if you respond like a dumbass to his dumbass comments, then double dumbass on you, right? In the words of Star Trek 4. So, in a second, we are going to get to more of all of this. But first, you're going to have to go over to dailywire.com and subscribe. For $9.99 a month, you get the rest of this show live. You get the rest of Andrew Klavan's show live. You get the rest of that garbage Michael Knowles show live. You get all those wonderful things, plus Michael Knowles. You get all those things. And you also get to be part of our mailbag, which we will be doing momentarily. So I know you have lots of questions, life questions, serious questions. You want to ask them to me. I'm not going to answer your questions unless you pay me. Let's just be frank about this. So you're going to need to go and subscribe right now at dailywire.com. Check that out. $99 a year gets you the annual subscription. It comes along with this, the very greatest in beverage vessels. I mean, look at this thing, the luscious tears, hot or cold tumbler. The glory and holiness emanating therefrom will illuminate your life and fill your mind with joy. All you have to do is spend $99 to get all those things, and your life is just better. Plus, we have the Sunday special coming up this Sunday. We have a couple of guests that are coming up the next couple of weeks that are big-name guests. It's going to be a lot of fun. And when you subscribe at YouTube or iTunes and leave us a 5-star review, then you get all those things. Technically, you don't have to leave us a 5-star review to get access to the Sunday special, but I'm going to pretend so you give us a 5-star review. So go check that out right now. We're the largest, fastest-growing conservative podcast in the nation.